so I was looking, like my soul was like outside the body and like my, a lifeless body. And I was like, oh shit, I'm dead. And kind of was like, whoa. And then I kind of was like, then that's when I was just in this unconditional love, this vibration. It wasn't, um, I, it was very impersonal, but so personal. Like I had known and I'd had encounters with angels and with like my past, like people who had passed before on, when I was like in my body on earth. But in that moment, it was just it was just this womb of like love and like just this divine consciousness, and everything was known. So it was like the veil dropped, like anything I wanted to know, like I had the answers to.
Hi, everybody. It's your girl E, and this is another episode of Vision Rebirth. This is a podcast where we explore life changing stories of near death experiences, out of body experiences, divine dreams, meditations, and encounters with higher beings. And today we have a special guest. She's a healer, coach, medical intuitive. She has her PhD in Chinese medicine, and she's a master theta healing expert with over 15 years of experience of experience serving clients and students globally. Her work focuses on reprogramming subconscious beliefs, releasing trapped emotions and trauma, and empowering individuals to achieve their desired success. We have Dr. Allison Snowden. How are you doing, Doc? I always, because I know people that get doctors, so I always make it a thing to make sure I always say Dr. Allison. How are you, Dr.
Okay.
Allison?
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you so much for your energy and that intro. And it's a pleasure and an honor to have these discussions on just our own internal healing journey and just like the global healing of our planet and the collective. So I'm so excited and to talk about how this all works together.
Yeah, same. I guess I want to start sort of in your beginning first, just to give a little background because
Oh,
um
yeah.
as a child you were special then, and you what which I think we all are, but like I think either we forget or it's just like, yeah, I think that's just like we forget. But one thing that I know
Part of the,
resonated with me with your background is that you were Catholic, and you were like, why are we listening to these priests? And I grew up Christian, and I kind of had the same thing about preachers. I'm like, why am I listening to this preacher telling me something that if I really wanted to know, I could read it myself? Like, what are we doing? So can you just explain like that thought process as a child
yeah.
growing up Catholic?
Yeah, I think, I was always, I think that's part of the programming and it's part of the human experience, of like having that divine amnesia of our past lives, all of that. And then, coming and then the wounding, the awakening. But I can remember, you have those memories where I'm 5'10", so I'm tall, but I have this memory where I was at like my mom's hip and we were in the pew of like the church, and I was like looking at her, looking at the priest, looking at like the whole thing going on, and I'm like, this guy thinks I need him to like talk to God, and I'm like I don't buy into that. And I also had I think I was around 6 years old. I can remember I was like looking at myself in the mirror and I just was like, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Was looking in my eyes and I was just like, I I knew I was more than, I always call it the meat suit, you know, just like that at that time it was a 6-year-old girl, who had blonde hair, who loved horseback riding. I knew I was more than all of those labels, because, the world tells us we're this, this, and this, but our soul is like, am I that? You know?
Right.
So I had that, I had that from the start. And then my older sister was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer when I was 7,
And how old was
and
she? How old was she
she was
when you were
9.
7? Okay, wow. That's
Yeah.
tough.
So yeah, so that was like that was 89, and we spent Christmas in the hospital. And she like had a lot of she's still alive. Everyone's like, she's still alive, and she's, there's a whole story with her too. But I think that's when I just started to, like, I was exposed to things that, normal is like this thing. Our childhoods are normal, so I was in the hospital with her. I went to like 11 or whatever, so kids' funerals, because we were
Yeah.
hanging out with all the oncology, and so there was a lot of death.
How did that affect you as a child, seeing that
Yeah,
in your
and
belief system?
well, I think, what I want to share with like your listeners is, I talk about trauma, and I have had the big T, and this is a big T to have a sister, going through chemo. But I always like to kind of pull this apart a little bit and really show how our little child brains, because lifes, I have a lot of um clients and students who are like, my parents didn't mean it, they're not malicious, they're not evil. But I'm like, yeah, but like, you didn't know that at the time. And so I see a lot of my clients and just kind of gaslighting their own experience about like what it was like to be a child in their household, even though there's no malintent and there's no evil. Like, it still has an imprint, and that imprint affects you. And a lot of these imprints and these life circumstances that maybe, maybe there are those trauma survivors, or those child advert the children who've had, like, that had mean parents, and that is that. But there's a huge subset of people that had trauma, and you know some neglect, because, like, so how that worked with me, I internalized like I wasn't important, because my sister's health was prioritized, or my sister was the priority, because, like, my
She
mom
had
lived
cancer.
there.
Yeah.
She had cancer. So, but like, when you're little kids, especially from like 0 to 6 and like adolescence, you internalize these things, and your brain isn't developed to think about this. And so it's like you take it very personally. And of course, like, with neuroplasticity, um, like, we're like, oh, like, I don't matter, like, I'm not as important. And like,
Well,
that
what's
was that point.
neuroplasticity? Like, what is that?
So well, this is there's a good and a bad side, or a positive and also a maybe negative of neuroplasticity. It's our ability to change and to adapt.
Okay.
And so, but the thing is that we can adapt to negative circumstances. What I see, I worked in like integrative pain management for a long time, and people would just normalize being in physical pain,
Okay.
and
Okay.
or normalize, if and this also happens like with good things, like, you hear, when amazing things happen to people, then they just normalize that level of treatment or that level of money, so that becomes the new normal, right? And so I guess it's positive if it's like health is the new normal, happy is the new normal, wealth is the new normal. But it's like when trauma and pain, then if that becomes like the new normal, because we adapt, but then are we going to stay there? So I see that
Okay.
with a lot of pain patients, and what I saw with myself is that there was some inner resistance to being pain free because I part of my subconscious felt like I haven't been here. It's like the unknown.
What I notice about you is you're not just sort of speaking medically. Like some of the stuff that you're saying is very spiritual that you're talking
Yeah.
about. So I want to talk about your NDE first and how
Mm.
you kind of are able to get, put those two together.
Oh yes, yes. Because it's all connected
Mhm.
and it's all in divine synchronicity. There's all a purpose in it. And yeah, my NDE happened March 29th, 1999. So yeah, it'll be 27 years, which is in like I was 15 years old.
Wow,
So I
15.
think I
That's
was
young.
15. Yeah. Yeah, I was a baby, and it was my sister's spring break, so I was a sophomore year, she was a senior, and like senior trip is go to Cancun. And so I asked a friend, my mom was going because she was God not going to let her daughter go by herself. And I took a friend, and then at the last minute she was in the hospital because she had an autoimmune issue. And her infectious disease doctors were like, she is not going to Mexico.
Right.
They're like, they diagnosed her with an autoimmune disorder. Like, they're like, absolutely not. No, 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 no. Like, she does not want to get sick there. Like, her immune system's like down. No, no, no. You're like, but like my parents had already paid. We were already going. So she like went to Florida, but we had already went. So in like it was like the third night out, I lost my friend. And so I told my sister's friends, hey, I'm going to go find my friend. And I was walking and I noticed some people following me and started running. And then I like, you know, blacked out. And this just like a trigger warning for anyone with this. Like you can like like some people who are going through this, they don't want to hear other people's trauma, so just that. But I was just sexually violated, and somehow we don't really know the like exact details because we were in Mexico and we didn't get like a police report, but I was run over by like a motor vehicle that was probably going about they said about 60 miles per hour. So I was declared dead at the scene. A guy was arrested for my manslaughter. And so at one moment I was, fighting these men. The next moment I'm like floating above my lifeless body where I ruptured my tibial artery. So I bled out a lot. And so I was looking like my soul was like outside the body and like a lifeless body. And I was like, oh shit, I'm dead. And kind of was like, whoa. And then I kind of was like, then that's when I was just in this unconditional love, this vibration. It wasn't I it was very impersonal but so personal. Like I had known and I'd had encounters with angels and with like my past like people who had passed before on when I was like in my body on earth. But in that moment, I like it was just this womb of like love and like just this divine consciousness, and everything was known. So it was like the veil dropped, like anything I wanted to know, like I had the answers to. And like below was like the drama of like the earth side, the drama trauma of the earth side. But I didn't like really care. Like I wasn't really watching what was going on with my like physical body or the drama of the earth. I was just like in this incubation of like white light and unconditional love. And any like then just these downloads of just knowing, like when you're like you just start to know all of, when the veil is lifted, it's, and you're at that high perspective, everything is known. I never had heard of this was in 99, so before, podcasts. Isn't that crazy? Before
Right.
podcasts.
Yeah.
um like I I had never heard of reincarnation. I was grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and Catholic whites. Just it was like I didn't get exposed to that, and so like it was very shocking when it was like, okay, so here are all your past lives, and like here are
Wow.
all of the details of every little one part, and then I was shown that in between lifetimes I would just read and study and like then try to figure out how I'm going to learn in the next lifetime. And I was like, whoa.
Interesting.
And the like, you know, I was like, is this God? Is this my soul guide? And I was like, whatever, we're all one, at the end, like, cause at that level, it's just like, we're all one. There is no like true separation. Um, and I, on that plane of existence, there is no time. Like there is no matter and there is no time. So matter as in physical matter. So it's hard to wrap your brain around that. So I felt like I was up there for forever.
Yeah.
I was basking in just like this white unconditional love. It was like I and God or my guide, doesn't really matter. Who cares? It's like that presence, whatever name it goes by or whatever name you want to choose to call it, was like, this is who you are, Allison. Or like, well, it didn't say Allison. It said my soul name. And this is
What's
who
your
you
what's your
are.
soul name?
I don't share it. It's
Okay.
just like it's the one thing I don't share.
Yeah.
Like about my
Interesting.
experience. I'm a pretty open book except for that. Um but like this is who you are. And then it was like showing me like with my like the body, it was like that's not who you are. Like yes, you have a body, you have a brain, like, but that's not. And the divine just was like, everything that you thought that matters doesn't really matter. And this is just for my life, because I am aware that different souls have different missions and different objectives and learnings in each life. So I'm not projecting that my life purpose is everyone's life purpose, right?
Yeah.
But what the divine told me is, all that matters is, Allison, or is like to love yourself and love others. That's all that matters. And people are, you think that all these other things matter. It doesn't. Like love is the highest frequency. Love is the biggest power. It is the only power. And you know this is the frequency of love, because a lot of us have distorted concepts of love.
Yeah.
If you grew up in a family and you had emotional or physical abuse, or sexual abuse, or even bullying or passive aggressiveness, you don't, that's a form of love. And like in your brain, in your human brain, you are like, love is pain, love equals abuse. And so um we all have our own individual paradigm and program that we've developed through our whole human life experience, but also through past lives. And also, yeah, it was very shocking. And to like realize that I had had past lives, but then I was like, oh, then it kind of like resonated. But I think it is shocking, when you've been indoctrinated or programmed, in a certain, and there's nothing wrong with being programmed or indoctrinated. It's just that you just have to remember that your true identity isn't your belief system, right?
Right.
But I think that was very shocking, and that's like all a part of the spiritual awakening journey, is that like our worlds, that we have created with our belief systems and our experiences gets blown open to something else, right? That what we knew wasn't maybe the whole truth or the highest truth or the biggest picture. So I think all of us can really relate to that, even if you didn't have a near death experience, like the different levels of awakening, within your own life just through your, human lifetime.
So is that how, like,
So
when you were having your NDE, did someone tell you like your purpose is to, get into like this healing practice, and like, is that where that spark happened for you?
I think so, but it wasn't that direct. It was like, so, the people are like, so did you choose? Did you feel like, there's always that question, like, what did you have to go back? Did you choose to go back? And that's a layered question, because I felt like I chose to go back like before I was born,
Yeah,
if that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
So, I mean, there was a choice. I could have changed it, but there was a whole
You wanted to go with
plan
the
around
plan.
me. Yeah.
You wanted to go with the plan.
So, yeah, so I was like, my soul had already chose that I was going to go back. Yes, I could have stayed there. Did I have buyer's remorse? Did I when I got back in I sure as hell did, guys. Near death experiences. Yeah, I mean, I was like, "Oh my god." I was like, "I chose this." And I literally was in the hospital and I was like, "Can I go back home?" And they're like, "Nope. You already made that decision." I was like, "Shit," the whatever word that you can't say on media. I was like, why did I do this?" But, you know, your ego part of yourself and your human part of yourself, like, honor and validate all of those emotions, all of those different states you go through, and you also can really hear your soul.
Okay.
Your soul like talking to you, and the angels, they're like, "Steady, Allison, this is a marathon run." And I was like, "Oh, great. Thanks."
So you could
I
hear
was
your
like, "Great." And
angels and guides after that experience more very clearly.
oh yeah, and they're like, "Buckle up, baby. It's going to be you're going to be in a kind of a hell for 10 years." And I was like, "Great.
Wow.
Sign me up."
Fun.
So, fun time. And so really I became a healer out of necessity, because no one, well, it took about 2.5 years for all my bones to heal. So I had major orthopedic surgery after major orthopedic surgery. My bones were
Wow.
so crushed that
So that put you
like
to maybe
my arm
17, 18 from to where you're finally at least physically healed
healed.
and stuff. So wow. Wow. That's a
Yeah,
that your teenage years mustn't that there was no fun.
there was no fun. There was a lot of gossip about what happened to me or what really
Yeah.
happened. And then, people blame people when that's a very natural thing. But you know what? The positive side of that is that I learned very early on I can't control anyone's narrative of me. And it was like
Mm.
it was like what other people think of me and my story and whatever gossip, judgments, like, it's not mine, and I surrender it to God.
You were
And
learning a lot of
there's
adult concepts at a very young age.
oh yeah, it was a fast track, and it I had to, because I couldn't control it. I wasn't at school. I couldn't defend I couldn't, it was just that's how, I think when there's fear, that's humans do that. They create stories. We create stories about ourselves. We create
Yeah.
stories about others, and we harm each other a lot of times with those untruths and those stories. And so I had to really lock into my truth, which was very isolating, and also I was very isolated because I was in the hospital all the time. And of course, people came to visit me. But I mean, guys, you know what like 3 years in a hospital is like?
Yeah.
And then
Fun.
people are with you, but then a lot of times you're just by yourself. So
Mhm.
except though I have to put in there, my mom would hear that, she'd be like, I was with you a lot. She was. Um, but I think trauma, what trauma does, and my mother would say, Allison, people would be all around you and you would be like, I feel so alone.
Yeah.
And I think that's what trauma does. It disconnects us, and that's what violence does. That's what, betrayal, that's what it does at its core. It disconnects us from our sense of safety and reality. Our dreams, our future dreams, they all died in that moment. The old version of myself was gone, and I felt alone. I was alone in my trauma. um, and I was, technically the patient there, and everyone got to go home and sleep. And so there was just a very deep level of isolation that I really couldn't articulate at that moment. And also the isolation of the vibrations of the trauma, still being in my body. I think there is this huge misconception and collective understanding that when something is over, the trauma is over. That's
You know.
ridiculously false. And the body remembers, the body keeps the score. Gabor Mate talked about that, popularized that. But, you know, I I didn't feel safe in my body. I didn't feel safe in this world. Also, I was in chronic pain, and people, and just for your listeners, like, do not internalize other people's projections of what your body can do and the capacity that you have to heal yourself, because I think that is a lot of doctors don't realize that, they think that they're delivering the truth or whatever, or like trying to, kind of lower my expectations of myself. But they were just like, you'll probably be in pain the rest of your life. And,
Wow.
objectively from their, probably clinical studies, it's probably like that was probably the healing thing for me to do. But I was like, absolutely not. I'm not going to internalize that. I, like, I am not, oh yeah, sign me up for for a lifelong life of pain. Like, no. Like,
Yeah.
if I survived this, like, I'm going to figure out how to heal this pain. So then, that was because so then I started searching for doctors and for healers, but I had never met someone that had gone through the extent of violence or literal physical, and emotional, all of that. And so I was piecing together all these different healers. So then that was like phase two of, there's a lot of NDEers that are like, oh, I saw the light and then it was just bliss consciousness. Absolutely not. I like I was in heaven and then I was like catapulted to like hell on earth. And
Right.
I was like, how the hell do I heal this? And you
And there was
know,
no one, and there was no one at that time that was into the type of healing that you really needed, which was more than just physical and probably
yeah.
more than just therapy too. Like it
Oh
sounds like
yeah.
you also needed that, that energy healing, that
Oh, I
spiritual
needed
healing.
everything. I
Yeah.
needed everything. And I think one thing that I see with, a lot of people are like, well, I think the gift of having such a horrific, like, you can't deny trauma is you're like, I need healing. You're like, I need healing. There's like no denying. And the shame, I had to really let go of the shame of needing healing. I feel like a lot of people have shame around needs, or, needing healing, or that, that means that they're broken. No, we really have a broken society. and there's been a culture of violence a long time in history. So, we all need freaking healing.
Yeah, we do.
And 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 needing healing doesn't mean you're inherently broken, or you failed in some way. It's actually an act of self-evolution, because there's a lot of people that are, programmed through fear and shame, to not get healing, and they just pretend they're happy in their broken body, or they're happy in their life that they're really truly not. And that's going back to my definition of trauma, is disconnection from self, disconnection from others, and also disconnection from your dreams and desires, and your joy, right?
Right.
um
Well,
so
how did you discover um like the healing that you eventually learned
oh
that healed yourself?
so there's all of this stuff that was happening. um it's like system overload. There's just all of this trauma, and then it was like 3 years went by, and then I can finally walk and my bones are not broken, and it's like go off to college, and that's when I had my first like PTSD attack, and I just was like, I can't leave my room. So my journey as a healer and my healing journey has kind of mirrored each other. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like, I'm messed up, I'm in pain, but you know what? I get what I saw with a lot of medical doctors and like doctors in general is like the lack of emotional attunement, and to the person, even with some of my therapists, because they were intellectually understood trauma, but they didn't understand it from a lived perspective.
It sounds like you were almost like being led to all of this, like you were listening to your soul and like feeling what resonates, and it was like, okay, like this is what I need, but this is also what I think people need, and it just all kind of
Yeah,
coincided.
yeah,
Interesting.
and also I think my trauma was so overt, and what I see with a lot of my trauma survivors is like either it's very overt and it like incapacitated, like it really blocked me, but the blocks were blessings, because then I had to face my healing.
Yeah.
I couldn't compartmentalize it. I was like, I can't live like this for very long, so creators like show me how to heal myself. And so I chose Chinese medicine because it Chinese medicine, which the theory that it's rooted in is deeply holistic and integrative, and it actually reflects what now neuroscience is now
It's
reflecting, that
starting
there
to.
aren't just systems. Your emotion, you can't separate emotions in the physical body. It's communicated through the nervous system, it's communicated through your own endocrine system, and your all of your endorphins. You can't separate your physical from your emotional body. They are one. And so
Yeah.
in Western medicine, with Rene Descartes, there is this fundamental thing of separation of systems. Well, that's not reality. So I went with Chinese medicine because it was just this beautiful way of balance is health, and the emotions affect the organs and vice versa. So if you have something wrong with your physical, that affects the emotional, and there's this synchronicity and this intercommunication. So I did that. I did my master's and my doctorate PhD, and was practicing with integrative pain management. I loved working with cancer patients, worked with some hospice patients. And I just have this deep, I think, kind of my energetic signature, because I've healed such great, like, I'm now pain free. My PTSD is in remission. But I have such a deep, my near death experience. People are like, "Oh, so you believe in God?" I'm like, "Belief." I go, "No, I know."
I know.
Like, like
Mm-hmm.
a belief is it's not confirmed. It's like I have a lot of belief systems in this life, but the only real knowing is the power of love, and the power of that that power and how we use it and utilize it. So I think when I was with my patients, I held that space, and I feel like I energetically reminded them of, like, hey, those are their limitations. What do you want? What do you want to heal? And
Yeah.
so I got trained in a lot of functional medicine, went down the whole functional medicine, blood, gut, microtoxin, all of these different things. I was genetics. I had all of these different things. And that was helpful, but then I was hitting a wall. And I had a flare of like a PTSD, and I was like, okay, this is the invitation to go deeper. And a lot of people find theta when their like soul is just, it's their time to go to that next deeper level. And I don't even know what I searched, but I remember seeing the class on the internet. I was in California, and I was like, I was like, I need to do this. And we're like, okay. So I went, and I walked out of there, and I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm back. I was in that class. I felt like I was in my NDE,
Right.
and that vibration. So theta healing uses the creator. I call it the divine, but Viana calls it the creator vibration, the seventh plane vibration, to heal. And so I found that, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna. So I just went. I got like 4 of the classes, and then I just kept on going. I actually had another kind of healing crisis. I had like a septic infection. That's a whole nother story, but we won't go there. But that led me on the path of, then I had to relearn how to walk again,
Wow.
and heal myself. And I had this, it was an injury from a septic infection from a stem cell shot. But what I found out, I needed to do a knee replacement. And this is Theta Healing's healing miracle for me, that actually I think really blows people's minds away. But I think there's a deeper healing that is the deepest healing that I've received from Theta, and I'll share with that after this. But I had bone on bone. So they said from this knee infection, I needed a knee replacement at like 35 or 6. And I was like, absolutely not. I can't. And I just decided, I was like, well, I get to heal this with Theta. And it took about 8 months. But it really showed me that our physical reality can change, based on our emotional and our energetic, blueprint. And what I found with healing my knee, I had a lot of fear that was, you know, residue from, I mean, all of my experiences in this life has been scary. And I had, just fear and resentment and emotional pain that I had not digested, that was expressing itself through,
Yeah.
physical
The
stuff.
physical pain. Yeah.
So I I got my mind blown open by that. And I had it was a series of many healings. And then there was one self healing that I did. It was at the soul level. The belief was, I know how to be on my soul mission without pain. And once I cleared that belief, I had no pain in my knee, and I've been pain free ever since.
So is that what theta healing consists of? Like what does that consist of, theta healing?
Diana started Theta Healing, and she's a lot like me in the sense that she had a lot of like physical things that she healed. And so she then started teaching people how to do it. And then now it's a trademarked healing modality. And basically, Viana uses the seventh plane, that unconditional love, to heal the subconscious programs and
Okay.
to download new belief systems, right? And
Ah,
so,
okay.
here's the thing that is really interesting, is that there's some people, I definitely was not one of them. There's some NDEers that come back and they're, like I say, they're in like bliss comfort consciousness, they're healed. And I was like, well, something wrong with me because I'm like a total hot mess, you know? And and I think that was all part of the design so I could really
Mm-hmm.
understand why people don't heal. I mean,
Yeah.
I was very stuck, and I tell my clients and students, like, don't, like, this product, this version of Allison is the result of like so many years of healing. I've never seen someone as distressed, as scared, as broken as myself. And I think that actually is a gift because I really I can hold space. Like, other people's stories don't destroy me. It doesn't destroy my vision, like, because I've been there.
And you,
And
so you had to reprogram your subconscious to tell itself a different story so then your body could heal.
yes,
That's what it is.
and to go even deeper than this is that in our culture, because we live in a very victim blaming culture and a very emotionally immature culture for the most part. And so I actually saw, and my truth was minimized, gaslit, by a lot of people, and so it's almost like my body wanted to hold on to the pain, on a deeper level to prove that I did go through something. And this
Yeah.
is obviously all unconscious, but a lot of people are like, well, why am I afraid to heal? Like, you know, why do I sabotage myself? Well, because your brain and your body is here to prevent pain and any future injuries. And also, um you know, I think that's the next level of embodiment, enlightenment in our body, is to really, on a cellular level, release the trauma that we've felt it from our body and also like in our DNA, right? And this is
Yeah.
going into the ancestral trauma, is
Yeah.
that, so I went, this is so, and this is not woo woo. Like, Viana created this in 99, right? When my NDE was, and none of this was being talked about. But it's so amazing because now neuroscience has like caught up with what Viana has been saying for so long. And some of the studies is that, like, and they've done it through, you know, mice where they hurt, you know, a grandparent, you know, and then they have babies and they have the grandbaby mice. um like, then they create a pain and a stimulus, so it's like, you know, what if it is, you know, like for me, it was like motor vehicles and I was in Mexico. So when you are hurt, it's like your brain takes a screenshot and your brain's like, okay, all of this is like danger, danger. So of course I had stress when crossing streets, and like that makes sense, right? That I would have that considering what happened to me. But think about this. Um, so what about 3 generations from me? Um,
Right.
like, if you don't do the healing work, and I'm not gonna like heal, like, uh, I think it's such an amazing time to be alive because we're the first generation that are, you know, have the opportunity to do the deeper healing work, even though it's scary as shit sometimes.
Yeah.
We have the opportunity, whereas our ancestors were in just survival mode like their whole life. And to be honest, I was in survival mode up until, I mean, I thought I was out of survival mode by like year 2 of teaching theta healing. No, I didn't really land in my root chakra and feel safe in my body till about, it was like 3.5 years ago.
How can people um begin to heal that subconscious, like you said, because you mentioned that it can't just be, oh, well, you just change your belief system. Because I know that you can consciously say, oh, like now I'm not scared of spiders anymore. But like you said, that subconscious is
It was like,
still going to be, yeah, like that subconscious is still going to be scared of spiders. So, how can people begin to do that real healing work of healing sort of the root cause? Because I know
Yeah, I think it's,
affirmations and all of that, that's part of it,
well,
but
and
there's, you know.
and affirmation. So here's the thing with trauma survivors, or especially women who've been victimized and been gaslit. If anyone has had any narcissistic abuse, like, the trauma is your truth was denied. And so before the affirmations, before you start to reprogram, you have to acknowledge that what is and what happened. And for someone who's been through something horrific, sometimes like my inner child doesn't want to acknowledge what happened because it's devastating, and you
Yeah.
have to grieve and cry. And so what a lot of us, because none of us were shown or mentored on how to really face things in a healthy way, our capitalistic culture is filled of ways of numbing,
Yep.
distracting from your inner voice and your inner truth. And so I think that's why our society is like really suffering right now,
Yeah.
physically, emotionally, um, and also ironically then trying to post on Instagram and convince themselves and everyone else
Everybody
that,
that, yeah, everything's fine. Everything's fine.
you know, and also with like manifesting also in the West, it's very capitalistic. It's like, honestly, like I don't really, I mean, I don't, oh, maybe because like give a shit if I have like manifest like all these like physical wealth. That, yeah, that would be great, but like no, like my value system is like I want, when I have my life review, when I die, because it will happen at some point, I want to be like I showed up in the exact way, you know what my soul came here to do, and that's like loving myself and loving others. And that's just been kind of like my north star. And like also, you know I would, so I think like our goals and our desires are also enmeshed with our cultural programming and our traumas, right? And so I think first step, establish, well, you can come take a theta class or class with me, or come to me, or um, you can just start practicing mindfulness of just noticing the stories that are going in your mind and just being like, oh, that's interesting. And just, witnessing all of the different emotions. And also, I think it's different for different people because different trauma kind of like is like extremes. Like you either have the people that are insanely angry and very in touch with their anger, or like me, where I was like, I'm not angry. I mean,
Like you were.
I'm in bliss consciousness. I had a near death experience. Oh man, I was so disassociated from my repressed anger.
Mm.
And plus angry people hurt me, so why would I didn't
Yeah.
even, my brain was like, I'm not that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I almost made like a over correction, like I do not, like that violence almost destroyed me. I'm going to be, but like to be a whole and complete person, we all have all the emotions. But when we're little and traumatized, and also just like it's normal for the brain to kind of go those like extreme ways. Healing's in the middle, and really like acknowledging our own inner self and reconnecting to our pain. And I think a lot of people have a fear of connecting to their pain because you kind of feel like you'll get swallowed up by a tsunami of feelings. But really, just tending to yourself, and recognizing when you're people pleasing, when you're disconnecting from yourself, when you are distracting yourself with everyone else's problems or the world's problems, but totally ignoring your soul or your body screaming.
Yeah.
And I think I had this sacred, I felt like my NDE and my healing crisis was a sacred initiation. And
Mm.
actually it was my body and soul waking me up and being like, come here, come home and heal yourself. Like, we're going to make your symptoms so crazy. You can't ignore us. And
Yeah.
you see that happening with a lot of people. Also, like I've met with some people that I've talked to who've had accidents, or big traumas. And I was like, what was your state? What was happening right before it? Because a lot of times those things happen, it's like a buildup and it just releases a lot. So there's so many different things, but just starting, I am big with micro practices, like a micro commitment. Because I don't know about you, but part of like my adaptation to my trauma was like just huge. Well, I've always been a big goal and a big dreamer, but I think one of the biggest hacks is just micro commitments. So
Mm.
I see a lot of my clients being like, "Oh, I'm going to do this whole thing," and then they psych themselves out. Don't write a whole book. Don't meditate for an hour, 30 minutes, or even 20 minutes, 5 minutes each day.
Yeah.
Who cares if it's in the morning? Who cares if it's at night? Just get it in. And so just building that, and so really creating that practice where you're sitting with yourself. And hey, if you are scared to sit with yourself because your trauma is boiling up, you're not alone, and it's very human. And also giving yourself permission to get help, because you
Yeah.
don't I think when we've had relationship trauma or cultural trauma or bullying, and that could be in our family or friends or medical professionals or any group, we learn to not seek out help, because when we sought out help, maybe we were hurt,
Mm.
or
Or
maybe we
rejected.
were rejected or
Yeah.
blamed. I mean, how many of us have been blamed by, and this can be overt blaming, or we all know when someone's silently judging us, because
Yeah.
people can't hide their micro expressions. Who do you judge, either silently or overtly? That's your shadow work. So what part of you, so I started to use this kind of game. I was like, when I noticed my brain judging someone, I was like, that's how you judge yourself. Or maybe
Mm.
they're exhibiting a part of you that you think is so awful that you've already exiled within yourself.
Yeah.
And so I started to use my everyday frustrations with myself, with life, with society as a way, as a mirror to help heal myself, to heal like my fractured self. And it's great because then, you know, it gets better the more you heal. And you don't take other things so as personally. It gives you some space to reflect. So
Right.
we really have to face that. And um I think I think, what was it, Carl Jung that said, I love all of his quotes about shadows, but it's like, you facing your own shadow really then helps you see like other people in their shadow, in their dynamics. So like the healing that you do on yourself then upgrades and updates your perception of yourself,
Mm.
of others, of even the past,
Yeah.
right? So it but also just, I mean,
It's like
I
it's
have,
like you kind of get a little bit more compassion for
well,
everything
yeah,
and everyone
compassion.
because your perception changes of everything because you're
Well,
no
because
longer ashamed of your own
you're never
shadow. So
yeah, and so
yeah.
why, hey, you can have all your shame, and I'm not going to condemn you, shame you. I'll sit with you.
Are there any limitations that you have in terms of people with trauma that you don't? I'm not gonna say don't like to heal, but just people that may have like some trauma that's like okay, like I can't necessarily heal that. You may need another specific type of help. Is there any limits?
Well, I think, I mean, it's there, every person is, and I think that's like kind of where like I'm a little bit unique, because I've been in like the physical, emotional, and I had, it's not like I dabbled, but like I know, like, in been in integrative medicine. I, well, number one, it's just my belief system that anything can be healed. And also sometimes what we think is a healed state, some people think death, or like, someone living is healed. Not necessarily, because there's a lot of people who are so broken that are alive, and they're just walking like shells of themselves.
Yeah.
So there's many different versions and levels of healing. And I think healing is an energy and is a vibration. It's not a final destination. It is a way of life. And so, and healing is contagious. Actually, healing is more contagious than fear and hate. So if you just start with, meditating 5 days a week, oh, maybe then that, oh, you ask someone for help. I am really not like just asking for help and seeking it. That creates even a placebo effect. So just like, I think we put way too many limits on what can be healed and not. Also, like I've been trained in integrative cancer management. There are some people that, are like, oh, you can heal it by this. Like, you have to go to people who are trained like with, with if anyone has cancers, like really going to getting several people's opinions of, what you can take and taking back your power and also reconnecting yourself to the divine, because that is the source of everything. And I sometimes think my biggest overarching thing is healing and sickness and pain is an invitation for us to like really reclaim ourselves. And it's also a symptom that we're out of alignment in some way.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'll
so
say it
when we,
certainly sounds like that's how like you found all of this, because I think the blessing in everything for your story is that your trauma led you to your healing. And
yep,
like without your trauma, you would have never figured the healing stuff out. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Allison. I think we got
oh,
a lot out.
yes,
I
a lot
definitely
of good,
appreciate you for
yes,
sure. And definitely, if you guys, I'm going to have the information in my description, but make sure to go to her website, the awakeninginstitute.com. And I'll make sure I'll
and
have
Dr.
all her
Snowden, yeah,
and
and
doctor say that
I'm
it.
on
Go ahead.
drsnowden.com, and then come on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, follow, say hi, share a question. I love hearing from people, and I can always send a voice memo back. I'm always good at that.
That's love. Well, thank you guys for listening. Make sure you like and subscribe everything Vision Rebirth. You can find me on all social media platforms, _real E. Thank you again for listening. This is Vision Rebirth, and cut.